All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to have you. I've got Wanda Morgan here with me. And what we're going to attempt to do over a few sessions here is I hope is going to be really helpful for you. When all of this happened with COVID-19 and all the different things that it stirred up in me, stirred up in other people, Wanda's one of the people I reconnected with. And I've known Wanda for a lot of years. We were just recounting a little bit of how long we've known each other. But before going further, let me just introduce myself. So if you're watching this and you don't know me or don't know Wanda, you'll know a little bit of who we are. I'm Kevin Peridot. I've been in various ministries for about the last 25 years, married about 20 years, got 4 boys from 16 all the way down to almost 2 years old. That tells you all you need to know. I live in Winchester, Kentucky, live on my father's farm, and help my wife be a shepherd from time to time. So that's a little bit about me. Wanda, tell a little bit about yourself and particularly about some of your credentialing.
My credentials, okay.
Yes.
I'm a retired psychologist. I was in private practice for probably 30 years. Worked with a lot of trauma and neglect kind of issues. I also was adjunct faculty at several different colleges, teaching various psychological classes, like child development was my favorite. And I've been married for 45 years, so I have a whole slew of kids. I have 3 kids, 5 grandkids, and 2 great-grandkids. So
oh, wow.
I have learned a lot of things from studying and from teaching and from making lots of mistakes.
Yeah. And it might be helpful too to understand where you live now. Where do you live now? Because that'll give some perspective to these days and times.
Yeah, I live 45 minutes north of New York City, 30 minutes north of Brooklyn. I mean, the Bronx, actually. So we're in the epicenter of this virus thing right now. And have not gone to the grocery store, and tomorrow will be 3 weeks. So we go out in the woods and hike, but we don't see people. We see neighbors very far away from each other, and it's a little stressful around here.
Yeah. Well, let's dive right in. And again, we've got, just to give people big picture perspective, we've got 6 or 7 sessions planned out. We're going to try to keep each of them to somewhere in the 10 to 12 minute ballpark. So we're going to try to move through these things, but today is just kind of introducing the big picture. So Wanda, with your background, how are you seeing people being provoked right now? And how are you seeing this bring out the best in people and the worst in people during these times?
Okay. Well, I see obviously a lot of fear. You know, there's people fear the virus. Am I going to get sick? Is my family going to get sick? Are we going to have enough toilet paper? Just all kinds of things from huge to small that people are just really afraid of. Anxiety about, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to keep my job? And confusion, like life is turned upside down. How do you even run your day every day? Or how do I go about this thing of homeschooling? I've never done it before. Also grief, just grief of the loss of the smaller things you don't get to do every day that you normally would, and grief of some of the people who've actually lost loved ones. And just sort of this stir crazy kind of feel, when am I going to be able to get out of here? So kind of that's universal, people are feeling. And some people are responding to that real positively, like our medical personnel who are coming out of retirement to volunteer, people being creative, to do videos like we're doing, to have, I love the bear hunt for kids, where people put the teddy bears in their windows, and reaching out to neighbors who needs somebody to buy groceries, and just learning to do new things like make a face mask. And then negatively, I see all the survival stuff, panicky, hoarding. There's more robberies up in downtown New York City now, price gouging, just where people are just don't have good ways to cope. Just kind of all that's happening.
Okay. And so as we've had a couple conversations leading up to this to talk about what would be good to talk about. One of the things that came up in that conversation, Wanda, was you talking about recently getting to share at church and talk about shalom and God's shalom. So could you define shalom and tell us a little bit about how you see that playing out right now?
Well, a lot of people just think of shalom as peace or as a greeting to meet one another with, but it actually means a much bigger picture of everything being in kind of the right place, of wholeness, and appropriately done and for the well-being of all of God's people and the flourishing of all of God's people, which is everybody, God's people.
Yeah.
And that the vision of that would be what would be the best thing for each individual. Well, right now, everything is so thrown into chaos that even our normal structures that bring good things to people aren't working. So our challenge is to look and see what can God do with me? What can I do in this thing to move my environment back toward that place of shalom where more things are going in the direction that God would have them go. And that will bring me peace to do that.
Correct. And so what was so powerful when Wanda shared with me the other day, I think it was on Saturday that we were talking about this, was just the reality that God has not abandoned us, that God is still actively working things out. And there's a response that we have, a way in which we can participate in God working out his shalom and his peace and the way things are supposed to be right now. So one of those things that we've kind of talked about, and I'll let you kind of go through them, Wanda, was as we go through in these sessions, what are kind of those big buckets? As I ask you this question, like what do people need to hear now? And you kind of responded back with these 4 large buckets. Can you tell us a little about those buckets and give kind of people a preview of what we're going to be talking about in the sessions to come?
Sure. The first bucket I thought of was our physical bodies. How do we take care of our physical body? And part of that is, I picked it first because it's the most obvious right here with us all the time.
Yeah.
We can do things like exercise. We can do things like spend more time out in nature with the trees and the grass, and the daffodils are blooming here, which is wonderful. We can learn how to relax our body when it feels stressful. What are some exercises we can do to either maintain our peace or to regain it when we've lost it? And then one people don't often think about is sleep. How can we take care of sleep better? So that's a physical. Relational, it's like, how are we doing in our relationships now with all the chaos that's going on? Sometimes relationships can be the worst thing in our life. Like it's the biggest problem we have. And sometimes it can be our greatest resource. How can we do that well during this time? And what's it like to be missing out on regular connections? And how do we reestablish something to take the place of that if we're not seeing the people we really love and miss? And then spiritual, how do we lean into the relationship we have with God in order to tap into the resources he has for us to help get us through any situation? Much like, and this one's not surprising God, and he's got people through wars and famines and deaths, and he can get us through this one. And then lastly, we're going to look at emotional. What can we learn? How can we learn to stay more positive in this situation? How can we manage any anxiety, depression, those kind of things we might be having? And is there a place to look for outside help if we might be getting in that kind of situation? So those are kind of 4 areas I'm looking at. Yeah.
And I think we're moving a little bit more briskly than we thought we were through all this. So can you say a little bit more? We were really worried about the time here, but can you say a little bit more just about connecting the dots between kind of your holistic, I don't know if that's the right word to use, your holistic view of this, that it is all the way from what Jesus does in our heart, all the way down to things that are in our bodies, things that sometimes people want to separate between like sacred and secular stuff, and how we're really going to be talking about that as one. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. I think that mankind has had a tendency to try to separate his spirit from his body as if they're 2 completely different things.
Yeah.
And yet, if you think about it, if the Bible says to be patient, how effective are you at being patient when you're absolutely exhausted? Yeah. And you didn't sleep all night, or you haven't been up, and your kid comes up and says, "I want so and so." Where's the patience? And the primary difference is not your heart, it's not your training, it's your capacity. So that's a great example how something so simple as sleep influences, are we behaving the way that the Lord would have us want to behave? There's also a whole lot we know about brain science and how it works now that we didn't know 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and what we can do to give ourselves the best capacity to be the people that our true heart wants us to be. And our physical is sometimes the gateway that all gets expressed through.
Yeah. So in these talks, these sessions, whatever you want to call them, we're going to be exploring the full spectrum of all of that. So there's going to be moments, I think, where it's going to be, Wanda's going to be able to enlighten us on some things that are very much coming from a solid science. And there's also going to be these times where we're talking about things that, you know, are going to be very much based in faith. And I think I speak for both of us that in our perspective, that's the same world. Like God is over it all, and God created this order, and we can lean into this order, but it's both and, not either or. So just giving everybody the heads up that's is that fair, Wanda?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I think that kind of sets the stage for these sessions that are coming up. Wanda, is there anything you want to say to close out this session before we move on to talking about the physical category?
One thing I did want to mention is that we will be, since these are going to be short talks, we're going to be giving you references and resources to follow up after our talk. So don't feel like you have to write down, take notes, or because we'll be giving you generally some either videos or PDFs of resources you can look at online, because there's no way we can tell you everything in 10 or 12 minutes.
Yes. And the good thing about that is that Wanda, from the first conversation I had with her, like within 24 hours, she sent me multiple documents. This is what she's going to be sharing is the waters she has swam in for the majority of her career, particularly the last 10 years. So she had a lot of resources on hand, and we're going to try to get those into your hands during this time. So thanks for tuning in for this first one, and we'll see you back for the next session here in the next couple days. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.